All right, welcome back to the channel. So Tim Bradley goes off on the Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter fight. Must be having some inside information on the negotiations, because he says, what is this fight doing on pay-per-view? Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So in boxing right now, it's not the most exciting time in the world, and there's not a lot of really great fights that are going to be made. But one of the fights that are going to be made that I think is a terrific fight, or at least it looks like it's going to be made, is the Terence Crawford versus Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter fight, which was ordered by the WBO, but it seems like it's going to be on pay-per-view when it actually happens. And this is something that Tim Bradley went off on, and I think he went off on for good reason, because it's a trend in boxing that is not necessarily the best, where it makes a really good fight something that is more difficult for people to see. But at the same time, I think that there may be like a fundamental misunderstanding about what pay-per-view is used for in these circumstances. So let's go over it. Terence Crawford was ordered to fight Shawn Porter by the WBO for his WBO title, and they went to and it's a mandatory fight, so they have to have a negotiation. If they can't come to a negotiation, they're going to go to purse bid. They were originally ordered to go to purse bid, but then they filed. Porter's camp and Crawford's camp filed and said, look, we think we can work this out. So now they're in the middle of the negotiation in order to get that done. I think that they may have like another week or so for them, before they, have to announce that they've made the fight. And so it seems like this fight is going to be on pay-per-view, and Tim Bradley really takes issue with that. Now, pay-per-view is obviously, the way that you can where it's going to cost money for people to watch the fight outside of their usual subscription services. Like if you have ESPN, or if you have Showtime and the fight's just on ESPN or Showtime, you don't have to pay for them. You don't have to pay for it. But if it's on pay-per-view, you got to pay that extra money, and that makes it less of a chance that a lot of people are going to watch it. It really shrinks the exposure of the fight, and I think that it keeps really good fights away from the masses, where if it was just on Showtime or HBO, or, well, I always say HBO, I really kind of miss HBO now, or if it's on Showtime or ESPN, people would just be able to watch it. But the reason, but there are some circumstances where things should be on pay-per-view. And now Tim Bradley is saying that, really dogged it and said, look, man, this fight should not be made. There's no way that they should have this on pay-per-view, because neither one of these fighters are household names. He said that he went and he talked to, the people around him that weren't boxing fans, and asked them, like, do you know who Terence Crawford is? Do you know who Shawn Porter is? And the answer to that was no in both of those scenarios. So, according to him, that means that, this fight isn't something that should be on pay-per-view, right? Now, my take on it is a little bit different. But first, I think that when we're looking at boxing right now and the atmosphere that we're in boxing right now, that there's so much money being paid to fighters for these network fights, that I think that they're a lot more risk adverse for taking the bigger fights to begin with. So you have to find some type of incentive for the fighter to take the risks, and that's what I think the pay-per-view is. It's not really saying that they believe, or they don't go into putting something like this on pay-per-view believing that that there's going to be millions and millions of people that are interested in it. So, so we might as well put, charge extra money for this product that we believe is worth more. I don't believe that that's what they're doing. What I believe that they're doing is that they are basically saying, look, we want to have the fight, but we don't believe in the fight enough to put it on our network, and, and pay all of that money on the network for the fight, right? So because they know that Terence Crawford isn't the big household name, and Shawn Porter isn't the big household name. However, they do earn enough money in the sport of boxing where the fight's going to be expensive. I think the network says, look, we'll split the risk with the fighter. So what they do is they put it on pay-per-view, and they guarantee a certain amount of the money that they're willing to pay for the fight. They guarantee that to the fighters, and then they say, look, anything that you earn as an incentive, anything that you earn above and beyond that, right, you can get a generous cut of that and that would be the pay-per-view. So, while I don't like the fact that it's on pay-per-view for the exposure of it, right? Like, I think that this is a fight that is definitely one of the best fights that there is in boxing to be made right now. I think it's one of the best fights that could be made in boxing. I'm not saying like the top 3 or top 5 fights that could be made in boxing, but when you look at the weight divisions, the weight divisions in boxing, and you say, okay, well, where's most of the top action at in the weight divisions? You look at the heavyweight division with the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua's. Then you look at the welterweight division with Errol Spence Jr., Shawn Porter, Terence Crawford, Keith Thurman, and that lot of fighters. And so this is one of the top 2 or 3 fights that could be made in the welterweight division. So it's a very, very important fight for the division, because without these fights, you're never going to get the really big fight, right? Like, I think that there's something that's very underestimated by boxing fans. Look, you really do have situations where you need to make these underlying fights in order to generate the interest down the line. A lot of the reason why Terence Crawford is not known isn't a household name is because Terence Crawford isn't fighting the Shawn Porters, because he isn't fighting the Keith Thurmans. But I would even really take it one step further. I don't think that is really happening with much of anybody in boxing, really taking on, consistently taking on tough challenges and consistently taking on the best. I know that Errol Spence Jr. has done that, and I think that has really helped, balloon Errol Spence Jr.'s reputation. And you've seen that from his beginning, when he took his fight with Kell Brook on to Mikey Garcia, to Shawn Porter, to Danny Garcia, that these are all, top-notch fights. It wound up being on pay-per-view too, and wound up getting to a situation where they were going to have the big mega fight with Manny Pacquiao. But I think, that got Errol Spence Jr. to where he's almost willing to pop out the top and become a household name. The only way that you're going to make people household names is when they fight other fighters, that really possess danger. And instead of like saying that, this is a fight that shouldn't be on pay-per-view, this is a fight that should just be on regular TV for everybody to see. I understand that, and I think that would be, that would be the best thing. But, the second best thing to that is to have a situation where where you can have, maybe a smaller pay-per-view audience with hardcore boxing fans that would actually, though, allow the fights to take place. Because if you don't do that, if you don't have the pay-per-view, then the fight's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all. So what would you rather have? The fight not happen at all, or Terence Crawford go fight somebody like, I forget who the guy he was going to fight before, but it's somebody whose name doesn't register, right? Or even have him fight a Josh Taylor, or have him fight somebody else like that when the fight is not as important and is not as good a fight. So while I understand why Tim Bradley would be upset and say, look, man, these guys, this isn't worth, charging the average fan there. It's just a catch-22 type of situation where if you don't, then, you don't get the good fights at all. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.